So, David, we're going to be looking at, we're going to be using Living for Love in our church community during Lent, which is a time when we're preparing for Easter. We're going to be meeting each week and talking about the book, so you're probably going to get loads of emails from me with loads of questions. Like, what did you mean when you said this? As people ask me
I look
questions.
forward to that.
Yeah, good. I'm glad about that. And we begin our celebration of Easter with Shrove Tuesday.
We do. And
at St Germain's we have a pancake party. And this year what we're going to be doing is sharing a meal together as a last meal, a bit like the Israelites did when they fled from Egypt. And of course they ate up all the good things and then they fled with whatever they had. So if you were packing a suitcase to go on this Living for Love journey, what would you put in your suitcase?
I think I'd encourage people to take a bit of time and space during Lent. Try and get out the busy rushing around, the routines they're in, build in a bit of space and reflection to think about the people they relate to. So within the home, in the community, at work, who are you connected with and what does it mean to love them? Because we live our lives in a kind of continuous present. Whoever we're facing, the question is, what does it mean to love this person? So build some reflection to think about that. So that's the first thing I put in there. The second is an element of determination. This is a rugged, hard journey for Jesus to the cross. We're heading towards Good Friday. So be determined to seek love in every context you're in conflict, when life is going smoothly, wherever you're placed. What does it mean to be loving in this context, these group of people at this time in this place? So some determination. And then maybe some patience. People can be irritating.
Really?
They can. And even in the best relationships, there can be bust-ups and there can be disagreements and it can be difficult.
What can we expect on the journey, the Living for Love journey?
I think it's about being in the present. So I think our minds are often elsewhere. So I think integral to the journey of this living for love and this journey to maturity in love is living in the present. So the person opposite us is the person we've been given to love. Sarah, you're right opposite me now. So what does it mean to love you during this interview?
Yeah.
It's about being attentive, about trying to engage with your questions, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But it is about living in the present. I don't know if you watched Les Miserables.
Yes.
Sure you have. Well, at the end, Jean Valjean dies.
Yeah.
And in preparation for his death, they remind him that he's already encountered God. And they say to him, to love someone is to see the face of God. So on the journey, you're going to encounter lots of people. And as you seek to love them, you will also meet with God. And that's a deep and profound, wow thing.
It's a really wow thing.
Because our Bible tells us that God is love. When we live in love, we experience the transcendent. We experience God.
And that changes the way that we relate to people as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely does.
Yeah.
So Rowan Williams is very strong on this, but when we're in the presence of somebody else, there should be a certain reverence. We're on holy ground, which means we approach people a bit tentatively, let them be themselves, let them unfold before us, let them tell us their story, reveal who they are. And that requires a bit of gentleness, a bit of engagement, a bit of reverence.
Well, I'm excited for this journey.
Good. I'm
Excited
pleased.
Yeah. So, you've talked a bit about God's love. In the introductions you did for us, you talked about God's love being one of the themes we're going to be looking at. And as Christians, we talk about God loves us. How do you know that God loves you, David?
Well, I think we talk about God being the creator.
Yeah.
So we often think that's the Big Bang evolution. We went into that view of what creation's about. That might be a controversial thing to say. I don't know. But we think it's a past event. But actually it's not a past event. We're only held in being. You're only here today because of God's love. Creation is a continuous present act. So the fact I'm here and you're here is a sign of God's love. We also gaze around the world at all the gifts God's given us. But supremely for Christians, it's about Jesus. So the incarnation, the Son of God becoming a human being, and his life being motivated, and everything he does exemplifies love. when that reaches its kind of most vivid zenith, the highest point of love is the cross, when Jesus is lifted up and crucified for us. So I look at the world around us, but supremely I look at Jesus.
And you've talked a bit about God expressing God's love through creation, through our presence.
Yes.
Can you say something more about how God expresses God's love for us as created people, I guess? We're created by God.
Well, I think we experience it through human beings.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was to look back at my own life, I learned about love from my parents and my sister, my family. I reference them in the introduction to the book.
Yes.
You know, I learned to live for love in that context.
You've got that great quote from your dad.
I have.
From when you were a teenager, him
Yes.
saying, "This is all about love," and you think, yeah, right.
Just,
you agree with him finally.
Yeah, I asked him what the Christian faith was about. He said it's all about love, and I said I just felt it's too simple to try an answer. But then looking back at it, my dad was a very wise person, and I think he's actually spot on. So yes, I think we experience it throughout. You know, I look back at my life, and there's people I can say I learned about love from you, I experienced love from you. So I suppose for most of us, that's where we experience God's love on a regular, routine basis. And the everyday, what do people do for us? Yeah.
People's experience of love is really interesting, isn't it? And we all have conflicting experiences
We do.
of love. I'm just thinking about that story in the Bible of the prodigal son.
Yes.
And the young man's friends all disappear when he has no money left. And I guess most of us have got experience of what might be called fake friends.
Yes.
So how do we know when love is such a precious thing?
It is.
And we become very vulnerable when we love. How do you know when there's real love going on and when it's just, paper thin and it's going to disappear at a moment's notice? Or can't you know that?
I think there are certain tests. I think we can recognise when love is fake. So I think when it's not sustained, so when the friends disappear when life gets tough for him, so there's not faithfulness and commitment there. I think one of the things we do know about love is it doesn't involve control. So some abusive relationships can be controlling. So there's got to be a freedom in love, freedom to flourish, to be yourself. And there has to be some level of emotional investment. So I think if people kind of, when we're sad, kind of resonate with that, and when we're joyful, they resonate with that, then there's some sense of them being involved in our lives, emotionally invested in our lives. And I think that's one of the other key signs. But I think the real test of love comes back to the cross again, because it's about sacrifice and cost. So I think we see that. I'm always impressed by people who've got this kind of display their love with a deep kind of sacrificial commitment. So somebody, for example, who visits an elderly relative in a nursing home week after week after week, that kind of solid, dependable, faithful, reliable, committed love. We see the authenticity of that because of the cost to the person. So that's the acid test, I think.
What does it cost you?
What does it cost you? And we say that about marriage, don't we, sometimes as a joke. What's the most expensive thing about a wedding?
Yeah.
And the answer is the vows, because we don't know what they're going to cost us.
Yeah.
And of course it's in there in the wedding vows, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, in sickness and in health.
Yes.
So it's that faithful commitment, whatever the cost.
And of course you can't buy that.
You can't buy that.
Yeah.
But it's the most precious thing.
It is the most precious thing.